Mm. I think when we launch this one, we should launch another one called The Show with No Audio. And it's just 30 minutes of silence.
Hello, welcome to the show with no name. I am B. B is short for Brendan. He's Daniel. This is the show that has absolutely no Star Wars spoilers in it. Daniel, I have a question for you today, but before we get into the question of the episode, I actually have a pre-question because I kind of have to set this up first. Have you heard of, or does the name Conor McGregor ring a bell to you?
Yeah, absolutely. No, Conor McGregor definitely rings a name, which it's actually... this is actually weird. That's a great pre-show. You only get one question per show. You can't ask two questions. That's like breaking rules, or it's like breaking... I was going to say breaking the fourth wall, but that has nothing to do with what this is. Clearly, I don't know what the fourth wall is. I'm sorry. Let me get back on to your question. Yes, I've heard of Conor McGregor, but it's interesting because I hadn't heard of him prior to the most recent fight that he had where he won the lightweight championship. But I saw the fight. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
Oh, you saw it.
I saw the fight. I saw all the hype and everything like that. And
so wait, did you see it live or did you see it?
No, I saw it
Memorex?
live. No,
Okay,
I saw
you
it
saw
live.
it live. Wow, that's cool.
I have a friend who's really into the UFC. I mean, like watches every fight, always talks about them, everything like that. And he was here in San Antonio visiting, and he asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, sure, why not? I want to see him. I want to see my friend. So I went and I saw the fight, and I watched it live, and yeah. Do you want to know my thoughts on him, or is that what the
this is kind of setting it up. So I'm glad that you know that. So just for record, for people who don't know, because this is going to lead into the actual question of the episode. So he so the only reason I had heard of him, well, for one, he's Irish, and so anytime there's like a famous Irishman,
you have to know about him. Yeah,
exactly. So, and I had not seen the fight, and I had forgot it happened until I think a day or two after. And I happened to get on the internet, and it said Conor McGregor knocks out Jose Aldo in 13 seconds.
Yes.
So it was this was the UFC featherweight championship bout. So he wins, and he lands one punch, right? So he I think he hits his first swing. He does a lot of feints, and he does a left hook on Aldo, just knocks him out in 13 seconds.
Yep.
And so that's a record. That's a new record. And I'm just going to read. I'm going to try and edit this on the fly as much as I can because I got this off of SureDog.com. I have no idea what that is. I don't know if that's a legit
very
site.
reputable website, exactly. if I might say. I know very much about this place.
So this is all.
What was it called? It was called SureDog?
SureDog. SHERDOG. Like, sure, dog, I'll be there tomorrow, I guess, is how they. I don't know.
Go ahead, read it.
All right, so I'm going to paraphrase it because this is important. So, at UFC 194, McGregor needed one left hand and less than a quarter of a minute to knock out the greatest featherweight of all time in one of the 10 greatest MMA fights to live. Jose Aldo, who he had knocked out, had 10-year unbeaten streak and a 6-year reign over the division. So it's trying to give you a perspective of just how devastating this win was. And then it goes on. It says no legendary champion in the sport's history has ever been dethroned and deposed in such an inglorious summary fashion. Then it goes on to list several fights. The only one there I know is Anderson Silva. The next paragraph says the fact that McGregor knocked out the historically iron-chinned Aldo at its own is outrageous. That Aldo did not even make it out of the first exchange, never mind the first round, is something else entirely. We are talking about Aldo, one of the most technically and defensively savvy fighters to ever enter a cage. It was as if one of the greatest swordsmen in all the land tripped, fell on his sword, and died while heading into battle. What are the odds? So I saw the clip of the fight, and then I saw some commentary afterwards. And one of the guys said, and I don't know UFC very well, but I tended to go, you know what? This guy, I have to believe what he says. I believe him. He said that this record, 13 seconds, will never fall. It will last forever. And he says the reason that this is so different from Ronda Rousey, he says, hey, it's possible that Rousey can break it or someone else can break it in the female realm. But he says the reason it's so different is Rousey was always fighting, I guess with the exception of her most recent fight, she was always fighting inferior opponents, whereas Aldo and McGregor were two top-notch fighters.
Sure.
So, having stated all of that, put that out there for you. You are allowed to consult Encyclopedia Google-tikia if you so choose.
Okay.
What world records do you think will never be broken or are unbelievable that they still last, or
interesting,
anything along that line of a world record? Like, I think this will be broken soon.
Man, this whole time you're talking, I'm thinking we're going to dive into, what do you think of Conor McGregor? What do you think of Jose? Like, what are your opinions on these people? Do you know anything about UFC? I thought we were going to go in this whole other different direction, which I'm sure if my friend is listening to this episode, he's like, oh boy, like all excited, like, well, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to know my opinion because I don't know enough about it. I will say this, before I answer your question, I do want to say something about the UFC, just real quick, just a little blurb. I will say this, I've never been interested in the idea of UFC. Maybe it's just because I didn't understand all the rules or anything, and I just thought there's so many different fighting categories. Like, I had an old boss who was so into boxing, loved boxing, watched every match and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure he watched MMA as well, but they're so different, type of thing. And it's hard for me to really get into a sport if I don't understand it, and there's so many different aspects and everything. I mean, we've had this conversation about soccer, or what most people call it, football, because you really like it. And I don't understand it because I understand the idea of the World Cup because every country is representing their country, but as a whole, like, I don't understand everything that happens outside of the World Cup. It's like, oh, we have these international friendlies. That sounds friendly. How did that happen? Friendly. They're really friendly.
Hi, would you like to play soccer? Very much so.
We would like to play soccer. So,
terribly sorry I scored on you.
But with the UFC, I will say this. The one thing I will say, and my friend probably said it better than I can say it, is that prior to watching the fight of Conor McGregor, not really knowing anything and just watching all the little previews and things that they played during commercial times and stuff like that, my friend said that whether you love Conor McGregor or you hate him, he has done amazing things for the sport of UFC. Just because he's so different and he's so out there and he's very much for the crowd. Yeah. And in watching him fight and watching him enter the ring, and I've seen clips of other fights and stuff like that, just watching him, whether I disagree with him personally or his personal life, or I don't agree with how he talks or anything like that, when he entered into that ring, there was no doubt in my mind that like 95% of the people in that arena wanted him to win. Like, he just had such a control over the entire crowd, and he was fun to watch. Like, he walked in there, he like got down like Spider-Man, like walking around the rink, and I'm like, what is this guy doing? Like, this is awesome. I was like, this is really cool. My friend turns around and says, and he's like, do you know that the tattoo on his chest is it's a gorilla eating a heart wearing a crown? He's like, you don't get more BA than that. And I'm like, that's pretty true. I can't think of anything more intense to put on your chest.
What would you like to have tattooed on your chest?
I want to like a werewolf or something. Wearing. Anyway, I'll answer your question though. Let's get back to the question that you had. What records do I think that won't be broken? So
they either won't be broken, or you're amazed that they still stand, or
I'm not necessarily amazed that it still stands, but I definitely do not believe that it will be broken. I don't think it'll ever be broken. And there's a reason why. And there's really only one that comes to mind immediately. I'll probably pull up Google here in just a minute to see if I can find any other ones that I know about that I'm just not thinking off the top of my head. But one that comes off the top of my head is Michael Phelps' 8 gold medals in the Olympics. Wow. I don't believe any Olympian will ever win 8 gold medals ever again. And there's a reason why. The first reason is because of the sport. There are really only 2 sports that you can even compete for 8 gold medals in one Olympic Games. And that's swimming and track and field. And out of those 2 sports, there's really only one sport that you can really dominate that much that you could be considered for other things. So, for instance, Michael Phelps wins 8 gold medals in the 2008 Olympics. Summer Olympics. Mm-hmm. And during that time period, although he is very fast, I mean, he is no doubt one of the he is the world's greatest swimmer ever grace the sport. And for those of you that don't know, that are listening to this show, I was a competition swimmer. I swam for 15 years. I had a scholarship. I swam in college. I had an opportunity to go and swim for Olympic trials. And I have a great love and appreciation for the sport. So I do understand a little bit about, I do know a little bit about what I'm talking about when I say, and that's not like come from a pride standpoint or anything, but I do understand a little bit about the sport of swimming. And Michael Phelps was not the best freestyler, also known as the American crawl, if you've ever heard it that way. It's one of the 4 strokes. He's not the best freestyler. However, he is good enough that they could have put him on a relay. But there were other people who swam faster than him in that Olympics that could have replaced his position. But because, and the relay that I'm talking about, if you guys want to see one of the most amazing races of all time, and I really believe this, go look up the 2008 4x100 relay for men's in the Olympics. France was supposed to win that.
For which year is this?
This is 2008.
2008.
This is when he won his 8 gold medals. France was supposed to dominate. In fact, France's anchor man, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but he had the fastest 100 freestyle in the world that year. When he jumped into the water, he had about a half to a full body length ahead of Jason Lezak, the last swimmer for the United States. And Jason Lezak not only caught the world record holder in the 100 free, but he beat him to win that gold medal. And that is the only reason that Michael Phelps got his 8th gold medal. That was really the only one that he was so contested. I mean, he did win the 100 fly by 0.0. He won by 100th of a second. So I'll give him credit for that one. And that was an amazing race too. That's another amazing race if you want to see that one. Everything just went the way that Michael Phelps could have. He couldn't have asked for a better Olympic Games. And because of that, I don't believe that anyone will ever get to that place again. There will never be someone who's just so dominant in a sport that they'd be able to compete for that much. The last person who had the record for most gold medals in an Olympic Games was Mark Spitz. And the interesting thing about him is he was also a swimmer. He had 7 gold medals in one Olympic Games. And here's the thing. Michael Phelps competed in 8 events and got 8 gold medals. That is the most that he can compete in for one team, and there's only one other sport that you can compete in 8 events, and that's track and field. And you would have to be some sort of superhuman
that'd be hard
to be able to compete in 8 different types of events. You're talking about like the 100-yard dash, the 400-meter run, the 800, the 1600. Then you would have to do, that's 4 medals right there. Then you'd have to do something else like hurdles or the long jump or something. I mean, it would be, if someone wins 8 gold medals in track and field, that would be incredible. I mean, just absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
but
it would be.
I just don't think it's ever going to happen. Someone can tie Michael Phelps for 8 gold medals, but no one will ever beat him, and I don't think anyone will ever tie. At least from what I've seen in swimming, I just don't see it happening. I think watching the 2008 Olympics is one of those things that you will never see that type of game again. Or you'll never see that type of athlete competing at that type of level ever again.
So to comparison, put it more in perspective, right? So you were talking about pretty much the most events you can participate in is 8 as a swimmer. So I'm looking here. He has won a total of 22 Olympic medals. So if you participate in 8 events and you go to 3 Olympics, the most medals that you could win would be 24. He's got 18 gold, 2 silver, 2 bronze. So he's basically 4 short of, no, he'd be 6 short of a perfect streak, but 6 gold short.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's ridiculous. And see, as a swimmer, as a former swimmer, I can tell you the thing about Michael Phelps, one of the things, don't get me wrong, hard work is definitely involved in it. I don't want to take that away from Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps has definitely been a hard trainer, he's definitely somebody that people can look up to in terms of work ethic and training ethics. But he also has a body that's just built for the sport. I mean, just perfectly built for the sport that he's in. He has a long torso, short legs, oversized feet, and double-jointed shoulders. You cannot ask for a more perfect body build for swimming.
Double-jointed shoulders. Wow, that's
you can't ask for a
swimming,
more
yeah.
perfect type of thing for swimming. I mean, it doesn't exist.
So here we go. Okay, so I'm reading this, and then I read this a couple of times. And I'm like, I don't get it, but here it is. So Soviet gymnast Larisa Latinina has won the most medals in individual events with 14. Which I was asking a question like, I don't get it, but right, some of Phelps' gold medals were won as part of relay. Correct?
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but still, that's an awesome... Okay, so she's won the most medals in individual events with 14, which is 6 gold, 5 silver, and 3 bronze, whereas Michael Phelps has won the most of 22, 18 gold. That's still massive. Okay, so yes, that's still impressive. Very, very good. All right, so do you have any other... So all the stuff that I've loaded up, if you need me to throw ammunition at it, these are all crazy ones. For instance, I literally pulled up Google. I typed in most amazing records, and one of the first ones I see here, most straws stuffed in mouth. There's a guy in 2009 that has 400 straws in his mouth for 10 seconds. So that's a lot of straws. 400? I don't know. Never mind. I don't want to know.
400 straws.
There's a lot of these records that I'm just sitting there thinking, there's a slot for that? I don't understand who's coming. Like one of them was longest skateboard by a goat. It was, I think it was 22 feet or 22 seconds. I don't know how far it was, but it was a goat on a skateboard. And I'm just sitting there thinking, who, this has to be like.
Who has the time to, who cares about these
that's
things?
Exactly, that's the thing. It's like, some guy hanging out in the middle of like Kentucky. He's like, hey, how about we put that goat on that there skateboard to see how well he do? And because they got nothing else to do.
I do know one, and I may be citing this incorrectly, but I do remember hearing about a pretty crazy one. I'm not looking this up, by the way. In fact, I'm going to choose not to look it up because I don't really want to know. I'm just going to say it, and I'm going to let the audience look it up. Brennan, you're welcome to look it up if you want to, but I don't care. I think the University of Texas A&M, where my sister is currently attending to become a vet. If you don't know about the A&M stands for agriculture and military, and they also have a very competitive, I shouldn't say competitive, they have one of the top vet schools in the country. And one of their records that they hold, to my understanding, is they hold the record for keeping a chicken without a head alive the longest. I think it's over 2 weeks.
What?
And I was just thinking in my mind, I'm like, first off, how? And then somebody told me, I think when I was growing, I don't remember how I heard this or something. This could be a tall tale for all I know. I just remember hearing that, and I just remember thinking in my head, first off, why? What was the point? Like, what was your goal, to see how long you could keep the chicken alive for? Second off, PETA would be all over you.
Yeah, exactly.
In like a heartbeat. But while you're thinking about that, I have another one for you that I just found. Most spoons on a face. 17 spoons. It's held by a Canadian. We talk, hey, there's another fact about Canada. We always said we learn new facts. Canada, congratulations. You hold the record for the most spoons on your face at one time. It's held by your own Aaron Casey, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Caissie. Congratulations, Aaron, for being able to balance 17 spoons on your face at one time. I don't know why that's an accomplishment, but sure, I'll give that to you.
So let me read this real quick. This is crazy. This is off of BBC.
I can't keep going down this list. I'm sorry to cut you off. Most concrete blocks broken while holding a raw egg.
I saw that.
That is the most ridiculous and
specific
record.
I know.
24 concrete blocks. Why?
I don't know. Like while holding raw cucumber. Is that another section?
That's just, I don't know. I don't even want to know. Now, see, I was kind of hoping I'd find something more amazing other than just like,
I know, rather than just silly ones like I've eaten 6 trains. Okay, so no, but there was one that was kind of impressive where
someone has eaten trains. I know he took pieces apart and he's been.
There was a guy who has eaten an entire plane.
That's
I don't know,
insane. Why?
Yeah, he's got. I
get
that ultimately is the
I
question.
Got it, yeah.
So he ate it, bit by bit over a course of a couple years or whatever it is. But he's got like it's quote, the man with the iron stomach or something to that effect. So this is from BBC.com. How do they know that? Okay, so 70 years ago, 70, a farmer beheaded a chicken in Colorado and it refused to die. Mike, as the bird became known, survived for 18 months.
Whoa! That's a lot longer than 2 weeks.
Yeah, so exactly. So if you do this, like, what did I search for? I searched, my search was keeping chicken alive without head. And there are all these articles like, how is it possible? How do you do it? And so my question is the chicken really alive? Because there's no brain and cognitive sense. Like, man, I don't know. Anyway, on September 10th, 1945, Lloyd Olson and his wife Clara were killing chickens. He decapitated the birds. His wife would clean them up. But one of the 40 or 50 animals that underwent Olson's hatchet that day, behaved like the rest. They got to the blah, blah, blah. He still walked around, and I guess this is bizarre. This is not, we could do an episode just on, so I didn't find the A&M one, but 18 months. Like it's still, so here's the thing. It doesn't eat, right? It no longer has a mouth.
Yeah.
So what's giving it energy? It would clearly waste away because there's no nutrients coming into it. I don't get it, man. There's a picture of it walking around with no head.
Again, part of it is I don't understand why. It's just, I get after like a certain point, maybe it's just kind of like, oh, I'll just keep doing it, but why? I don't know. So there was a couple, while you were reading that, there was a couple that I found. I wanted to try and see if I could find some more sport related ones because I kind of feel like I'd rather read those.
Those are fun. Yeah, as opposed
just
to
like the most
ones,
ridiculous
like
one. So the
18
first
hula hoops balanced on my
The first one that I was reminded of that I actually still admire, even knowing that he cheated to get it. Regardless of whether he cheated to get it, he cheated the sport, it still would take an immense amount of personal training to get to that point. Lance Armstrong's 7 Tour de France's in a row.
Yeah, wow.
Regardless of whether you cheat or not, to win 7 in a row, I mean, you have to understand that's such a toll on your body. To do that, I mean, the interesting thing is, as I was reading this, it was saying something to the effect of that there have been 2 others that have won 5, but they have not won them in a row. And that's the thing, is that's what makes his so amazing, is that he did it in a row. So
that's utter dominance of a sport.
That's utter dominance of a sport. Here's another one. Get this. Now, this one I actually did know about, but I didn't know what the actual number was. Anybody who's a fan of the NBA, and I know it's just in the United States mainly, but the Utah Jazz point guard John Stockton. Everybody, yes. I mean, if you're at all interested in basketball, you should know the name. John Stockton has the list for most career assists. He averaged 10.5 per game that he played.
That's amazing.
He has 15,806 career assists, and the next closest person, or the next 2 closest people, are Jason Kidd and Steve Nash, and they are more than 4,000 assists away from getting within his record.
How many did they average a game?
Did the Utah Jazz or just
no? So John Stockton averaged 10.5 assists a game, correct?
Assists a game, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then Jason Kidd and
I don't know. I don't know what they're.
So it doesn't show that. So because that's also an
Steve Nash is still playing, I believe.
I don't think
Jason Kidd isn't playing, but I don't. No, I thought Steve Nash was still playing.
Steve Nash retired recently.
Okay, you might be right about that.
So the assist per game is really what stands out to me, because today, like, your assist leaders for NBA are like at the 6th level.
Exactly.
Like nobody they don't know how to pass the ball.
10.5 is pretty incredible.
And he didn't have a LeBron or a Kobe on his. It was him and
he had Karl Malone.
Malone.
Yeah.
And so he was really making his team work, man.
Exactly.
I shouldn't say work, but he was making his team.
Yep.
Where's this one? It's fastest distance. The speed. I'm trying to find the speed one.
Are you talking about Usain Bolt? I see. Usain Bolt has the fastest 100-meter dash, but those as fast as he ran, I still feel like those are going to be broken. I do feel like there's a limit, and that's the thing, and that's the interesting thing. Is the question is, where's the limit? For me in swimming, it was the 50 free. I was a collegiate swimmer. If you don't know anything about the United States and how they swim competitively, like the rest of the world, we don't swim meters. We don't swim 50 meters. We swim 50 yards, and it's a 25-yard pool. So there's a turn involved in the 50 free, and that was one of my events that I swam. And at the time, or at least as of right now, if I'm not mistaken, I think the record is somewhere in the 17 seconds range. I think my fastest time ever was like low 20s. I was like 20.5 or something like that. I don't remember exactly what my fastest time was. But I remember having this conversation with another person on my team. We were talking about, like records and world records specifically in terms of swimming. And the conversation came up to, what do you think the fastest time will be? Because there has to be a limit. I mean, you're not going to get down to negative seconds.
Exactly.
So where's the threshold? Where's the finest? What's going to be the fastest time? I couldn't tell you. I don't know what it's going to be.
I don't have the. Yeah, that's so I'm looking here at the mile. The record for the mile is, for men, it's 3 minutes 43. I'm going to leave off the points. 3 minutes 43 seconds. For women, it's 4 minutes 12 seconds. Now the men's has been held since 2000, I believe, and the women's has been since, I can't find that. But the mile is what they use since 1976. That's how they've been measuring it, is with the mile. And this is, 4.12 for a woman and 3.43 for a guy. And I'm like sitting there going, I want to get below 10. I'd be happy to get below 10. So they do have a chart here. So it goes from 1850 to 2000. 1850, your time, your sort of fastest times. Okay, so they have professionals, amateurs. So professional was 4.3 back in about 1850, 1860. 2000, so that's 4.3. 2000, you have it at 3.43. Mm-hmm. So dropped not even a second. So 4.2. Yeah, so about 4. It's actually, I'm looking at this bar here, so it's about 4.28 in 1850.
Okay.
2000, so 150 years, 160-ish, right? And so you go from 4.28 to 3.43. So you've dropped, what is that? 17 plus, you've dropped 40-something seconds. So like you were saying, so you have 160-something years, and you've points of a second. Yeah, not even a full second, right? So 150 years, and you haven't even shaved 1 second off of the fastest time. So like you're saying, like, how is it possible that somebody's going to get, right, somebody is going to get faster at swimming, but how much faster? It's always going to be tenths and hundredths as opposed to...
Oh, no, it's always going to be a small amount. It'll always be a small amount, and eventually you'll get to a point where... I kind of feel like it goes... Sports kind of go through these trends. If we're talking specifically sports now, they go through these trends of where, nobody really sets anything super impressive. People get close to the world records, and you still have people that are very admirable in the sport. And then all of a sudden, this wahoo out of nowhere, that just all of a sudden starts breaking records left and right. But they don't ever break it by much, I don't feel like. I feel like they only break it by so much. And then you have a lot of other conversations, like in swimming. The conversation was, well, what kind of suits were they wearing?
Exactly.
Because when Michael Phelps broke world records and got 8 gold medals, that was at the time that there were very little rules as far as what the suits were like and what materials they had. One of the most popular materials that was being used in the suits those years is a material called polyurethane, which is a material that keeps you more buoyant. It keeps you on top of the water. And if you're on top of the water, you have less drag, you're faster, and as a whole, you can swim better times. And so after that year, I think I'm almost 100% positive. No. It was 2009. FINA, who is the organization who oversees the rules for swimming internationally, came out with a new rule: no polyurethane in any suits.
Really?
And so there was a question that came out was, number one, do you take back all the records that were broken? Because every swimming record, aside from like 2, was broken in during that year and a half or so that the suits were legal. So do you take back all those records? And then the second question was, if you don't take them back, how long do you think it's going to be before people actually break these records again? Because clearly the suits helped out. when you break almost every single world record that was held, clearly it made a difference. And so there's obviously all those questions that people will have in terms of advancements in sports. I've always said, well, if you keep changing the rules and you let football players play on field turf where they can run faster because there's little bits of rubber in the ground, then how can you say no to other sports in advancing? You know, golf players come out with new golf clubs every year. Right. So
and new balls,
where's the limit there? I mean, obviously there has to be some sort of regulation, and it's an unfortunate thing because then you have people who do these incredible things like Barry Bonds, where, you know, or even, I mean, in the single season, I think it was Sammy Sosa who held the record for the most home runs or something like that. And then you end up finding like a year later, it was either him or Mark McGwire. It was one of them. They were on the race on the same year. I remember that. And then you find out later that Mark McGwire was doing steroids, and you find out that Sammy Sosa had cork in his bat. And then you just think like, well, do we take it away from them? Did they really do it? You know, and then and it was, I mean, obviously things are different. I mean, things are way different than they were back then. So honestly, the only one that we've probably talked about, aside from maybe the chicken being alive for 18 months or something like that, whatever it was, whatever you said.
18 months is amazing.
I think that's what you said, right? 18 months. Aside from that one, really, I think the only one that you can really look at, and there's been no proof that he cheated to get it, is Michael Phelps winning those 8 gold medals. I really think that there will never be another athlete who will get that many gold medals in a single Olympic Games.
I'd agree with you. 8, so because they'd have to get, they'd have to get 8. And what we talked about, what was the most as you can get is 8 golds. That's
the most amount of events you can compete in a single Olympic Games as a swimmer. That might change. You never know. The rules obviously change for what you can do. So now it's mandatory if you placed, right? If you're 1, 2, or 3, you get drug tested. Is that correct? Oh, that's a good question.
Because I know they have random.
You might be right. You might be 100%.
Also, because there was a swimmer, I forgot her name, it was like Michelle something, who was from Ireland, and she got like 2 golds or something like that in like 2 days, and this lady had never even placed before, and so like all Ireland was like, woohoo, we finally got, and then they're like, oh yeah, she's been doping. So I forgot, I don't know if they do that now for all of the winners or not, but
to my understanding, yes. When you get to that high of a level, I think they are testing you after every single one. It's interesting because they actually brought that into collegiate swimming as well. I was never tested in my years, but I had a lot of teammates. But it was random. They would pick one person from every final round to be tested. And I competed in a couple of different final rounds, which finals for swimming is the top 8, because that's the average pool is 8 swimmers. Or 8 lanes, I should say. But in all my times of competing, I was never tested, which I thought was interesting. I always thought it would happen at one point, but it never did.
All right, so just to wrap this up, I'm going to just shotgun some of these with you, and you tell me whether you think they're going to stand or not. You ready?
Okay, yep.
So here we go.
All right.
I got to pick some good ones. Okay, so 1988, Blackie becomes the wealthiest cat when its owner dies and leaves it $12.5 million US.
I think that's going to be broken. People love their cats. It's going to happen. There's going to be another million. There's going to be another billionaire or millionaire or something like that. For all I know, who knows? Maybe Donald Trump has a cat and he's going to die and give it all to him.
Daniel Bent. Oh, this is stupid. I don't even. Nothing silly. Here we go.
As if the cat one wasn't silly.
I know they're all silly. So they're all going to be silly. All right. So 1999, Gary Bashaw Jr., not senior, set the record for most milkshake dispensed through the nose, with 1.82 ounces of milk and chocolate powder came out of his nose at the same time.
Gosh. I'm going to say that one will never be broken because hopefully no one is that stupid.
Anna Atkins set the record for the largest collection of garden gnomes with 2010. Oddly enough, it was not in 2010. It was in 2000.
Oh, you mean she had 2010?
Yeah, she had 2010.
Why did she stop there? Is she still alive?
I don't. Maybe we'll look her up. We could look her up.
If she's still alive, I'm assuming if she's trying to break the record. Maybe 2010 was like the last person had 2009. Maybe that's what it was. And no, she broke the record.
In 2000, Anna Atkins
that's
set the
been
record
15
for
years. Is she still alive?
Yeah,
I mean, it depends on how old she
she's
is.
gotta
She
have
has
more by
to.
now.
She has to still have more gnomes.
Unless she finally came to her senses and like, what am I doing with all of these things? I got to get rid of them.
Garden gnomes are kind of. I mean, I don't know how they are outside of the United States. I haven't really heard of them outside of the United States. I know, to my understanding, they come from folklore and they come from Europe somewhere, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe Germany.
So my assumption is that there is definitely people out there that enjoy it and would collect them. I definitely feel like that one's going to be broken.
All right. So in 2008, Kevin Shelley set the record for most toilet seats broken by one's head in 1 minute by shattering 46.
I'm going to cite my previous answer, and I don't think this one will be broken because hopefully no one is that stupid.
All right. We'll leave it at that. That's good enough. I'm Brendan. He's Daniel. This was a show with no name. Daniel, is there anything you want to add?
But yeah, there was one thing I wanted to add before we close this out. You'll probably notice on because we're going to be posting these on YouTube as well. In fact, this one hopefully you might be listening to this on YouTube. We got locked out of our Twitter account. Or more specifically, I got locked out of our Twitter account, and I can't remember what the password is or anything. So we have a new Twitter handle, which has been at the bottom of every description for YouTube videos and every description of anywhere where we post our podcast. Our Twitter handle is Texas Waffles. So if you want to ask us a question or tweet us just some love, you can reach us out at Texas Waffles on Twitter. So, but no, that's it. That's all I got.
Okay, good. Thanks. So this show, the show with no name, will set the world's record for most unrelated Twitter handle to its show name.
I don't think we're going to have that record, but probably pretty close.
Hey, they have most toilet seats broken with your head in 1 minute. So they got to have ours.
Well, I'll call up Guinness after we're done recording and see if they can't
happens.
throw us in there.